with tens of millions of creators, and they excel based on actual engagement metrics like video completion rate, how many likes you get, and how many state duration you accumulated. So, and that also changed our way of working, even on the platform side, because we used to have a lot of operations, because you can still afford to focus on maybe the top 5% of your creators, and they can create like 80% of the value. But that's no longer the case. In the world of UGC, if you pick the top 5% of creators and you export their content from your offering to the users, it won't dramatically change the value of the product, because there are just so many of them and they substitute each other. So it's a game that doesn't require a lot of operations to interact with individual creators, but rather it is more like a competition among many people who are all welcome to join, and they can have their own ideas, and they can put those ideas into real content. Now let's talk about the future. When it moves to AIGC, what exactly will change? I think, first, the kind of a democracy or the accessibility of content creation will remain. But at the same time, I think there is one positive thing about it. It's like the skills of ideation and actually coming up with the creativity to have an idea, to have a script, will actually become more important. Because right now, I was just, the other day I was organizing this TikTok TikTok content creation training in one of the communities in Singapore called Ferndale. I don't know whether there are people from there, but we were doing that in the community club. And if you look at the course, 1/3 of that was focused on ideation. The other 2/3 were more focused on production, because there is still some threshold. The threshold is no longer as high as if you were a New York Times reporter kind of training, but you still need to understand like how to shoot, how to edit, how to use CapCut, how to do a lot of things that's more kind of administrative and not creative in nature. You still gotta learn that to become a successful TikTok creator. And even on TikTok, Instagram, the same thing, right? You gotta understand filters really well, otherwise it won't look as beautiful as other creators. But that, in the future, will become even easier. So with a large language model and its applications in content production, we are seeing very rapidly that all of this kind of a more administrative side of content creation will only become easier and easier and more accessible. We don't yet feel it as strongly today. But that's very common. Like in the early days of iPhone, in the first 2 years, what you can see is a lot of mini games and a lot of productivity tools on those apps. Those were not very important. The most important apps later on, like the social media, e-commerce, migration of mobile, that happened like 2 or 3 years, if you remember correctly, after iPhone was born. So just wait for 2 to 3 years. I think that's one of the changes that's definitely going to happen. And I feel that sort of like as a good thing, which is ideation or creativity, fundamental creativity playing a bigger role in our world. And that's actually, I think, one of the downside of UGC that can potentially be improved with AI technology. Because right now, if you swipe your TikTok and many other social media, I think it's the same thing. You can notice a group of creators, they are obviously trying to find out what are the ideas of others, and they will produce something highly similar, just with a different face to it. And I think with AIGC, and you can see a lot of video creation and text is even lower barrier. Those are rapidly developing. So I think that's one of the things. It's like the importance of ideation will only increase. But I think the number of creators will probably still be massive in this new world, because the barrier to content creation is only getting lower and lower with AI technologies. And I want to also talk a bit about some more relevant topic. Is that many of us here today, I assume many of you are not like full-time content creators, but rather you work for companies like media platform companies, just like I do as well. So what are the implications for different kind of jobs here? This is purely just personal views. It doesn't represent the company's view at all. But I think there are a few mainstream jobs in digital media platforms, right? One is, I think, product managers, designers. And you're familiar with the space, there are always two kinds of product managers. One kind of product manager is more like, kind of designer style, feature-focused product managers. They spend a lot of time, researching on the specific feature design, the color, and the layout, and how to refine it to the extreme customer experience. And that was viewed very important, and it will still be important. But another style of product managers, more like product management strategists. They work with data scientists, they work with engineers, but they were more focused on understanding the deep customer needs and making more strategic decisions regarding product directions. And I think in the future the trend will be more beneficial for the second type of product managers, because like product design, a lot of the work we do in Figma today, in the future will obviously be automated, maybe by Figma themselves, maybe by another product that can be more productive in leveraging AI technology. So I think that's one trend in terms of product managers. And in terms of algorithm, which is obviously a very hot topic over all these years, actually when we transform from PGC to UGC, nothing much changed, right? Because along the same time, despite the way of distributing content obviously changed. Before that, it was very much search-based, and then it gradually transformed to personalized recommendation. But if you understand algorithm, like the fundamental methodology is very similar, right? It's still, we call rough ranking and fine ranking. It's the same thing, from search to recommendation. Many aspects, like 80% is the same. That's why many of the search algorithm engineers smoothly transformed into recommendation engineers with no problem. But AIGC is a very different world. And in this AIGC world, as some of you might come from the tech background, and like nearly all of the engineers these days are using GPT to help them to write codes. They just debug a bit and then put it online. And so that's happening in a big way. And so in the future, I think complex algorithm design, system architecture will probably still be safer compared with the more repetitive or the more kind of a basic, no matter front end or back end engineering work, which to some extent over a long period of time will actually be more automated. So I think that's more engineering work. And data scientists, I lead hundreds of data scientists as well. And that I think we're already seeing the trend of requiring more data science to be very much business focused, deeply understanding the business objective, and kind of working very much side by side with business leaders, like the actual leaders, the general managers of each business line, to actually understand the fundamental goals of that. And the other group of data scientists you can see is they're more pivoting towards data engineering and data quality assurance, because in the middle of this two, like the high level business decision making and the data quality assurance and data engineering, in between those kind of like less scalable data scientist works are now more and more in the real world being automated with AIGC technologies. Many of our data scientists are leveraging those technologies to because you understand in the past many people spend a lot of time writing like daily reports or summaries of key findings, and those obviously right now we are already seeing pretty good summaries from AIGC and from bots, and many of those developed by our data scientists and engineers. So I think in that regard, either pivoting towards a business leader kind of perspective, and and kind of serve as a very hands-on kind of advisor, data advisor to the business leaders, or focusing more on data engineering to create more scalable solutions would be the more advisable ways to go. And lastly, on operations, I want to talk a bit, because I just mentioned, like when we transformed from PGC to UGC, it was less operations heavy on the content creation side. But actually, there is a silver lining there because I work in e-commerce and I can realize that there is one thing that's different because monetization is very different in the UGC world. It's rarely based on paid directly because of the content you created, but rather on the advertising revenue or on the e-commerce sales you generate, right? Because all the digital media, not all, but vast majority of us rely on advertising, and half of that will be e-commerce based on the performance of goods sold. The other half will be all sorts of other things, like leads generation or gaming revenue, right? Revenue sharing, all those kind of models. All of those work still requires operations because those are trust-based business. No matter you work with an advertiser or you work with a e-commerce seller, it's still human beings making decisions. Because I have been spending quite some time with the US and Europe market. Right now, still a very large proportion of advertising is still brand advertising, not just focusing on CTR, CBR kind of performance, but rather people trust their own judgment. And for operations people, no matter you work with advertiser or you work with e-commerce sellers, I think that is gonna be very resilient. Even in the world of AIGC, that's probably not gonna change because still human beings making decisions about the most important thing, money. Like if they spend money on something on the platform, no matter it's a big one or small one, you still got to have account managers, you have BD to actually talk with them, win their trust. They can't just take your numbers and say, I'll give you my money. They will need to trust you. They will need to understand how this works. Like, is this for real? Like, is this really incremental? Is this GMV really incremental for me? So I think that's going to be actually quite resilient. And yeah, so those are basically, I think, some of the trends I see. And again, it only represents my personal opinion, and I don't think it's going to happen like just tomorrow. Tomorrow, the world will be nearly the same. And it's going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, as we always say, gradually, then suddenly, right? But I think those are some of the trends I observe, and I think we need to be prepared for. And another small thing to end my sharing is that I noticed another interesting thing is that one of the effects coming on with the AIGC and large language model is that translation seems to be better and better. Automatic translation. I more and more notice people in the past we very much rely on bilingual people, in our organization. But recently, I noticed more and more people who either are not very fluent in English or basically doesn't speak English, joining meetings using automatic translation, which is so much better than 1 year ago. And they just participate in meetings, and then they just speak, and then get auto-translated. And those meetings are still not smooth, but the speed of improvement is astonishing in the past 1 year, I think. So that's probably going to happen. And I think one of the lessons to take from that is really, we really need to prepare ourselves very much in terms of our specialty beyond, knowledge. I think I also benefited from, the bilingual language skills in my past work. But I think that's kind of fading away a little bit. And it's important to really build a specialty, understand the local market, or understanding, the deep functional knowledge. So I think that's also one thing I noticed. And the last thing is I think there's nothing to panic about. I think just as Jeff Bezos said, all the anxiety comes from, happens before you start doing something. So if you actually go to YouTube and start learning about, AIGC, large language model, its basics and how it might affect my job, actually all the anxiety will just go away. It's fundamentally still the integrity and ambition and, and intelligence in us that can, help us excel in career, and that probably won't change. Yeah, that's basically what I want to share. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Ted. I'm the Chief Digital Officer of Higher Digital. I don't know if any of you know of platforms like Upwork, where you can be a freelancer and you can apply for jobs. So my company, it's kind of like an Upwork, but we vet applicants. Like we only take the top 1 to 5% of applicants globally, and we match them with large companies like Citibank, TikTok, and other enterprise players. We mostly do roles in digital media, like developers, marketers, product managers. So yeah, that's my background. I think I was kind of trying to look at the title of the seminar a bit literally, and trying to just share what we have personally seen as a hirer. We probably process like thousands of CVs every day, and I think I'll just share like what we see out there in the market. I think the number one thing we've been seeing is something like Kelvin has been talking about. Like, if you have ever seen the recent graduate who doesn't apply for a job and try to become an influencer, do product reviews, do podcasts, we have seen this parallel in the professional world. Where like you have a recent software developers who don't join a large company, but try to create their own media and bypassing traditional media. They create their own TikTok channels, they make their own podcasts, and they then when they apply to jobs or they apply as a freelancer, they are much how do I put it, like they're much further in line for the employer to evaluate them because they have a lot of content, right? So we've seen a lot of this kind of changes in the job market out there. People are a lot more aggressive about creating their own mini businesses. So like the other day I was watching on YouTube with attention about some doctor who spent 10 years trying to become a doctor. But then he was so good at making doctor podcasts by interviewing other doctors that he quit becoming a doctor after a 10-year journey. And he makes a lot more money. And this is not Dr. Mike, by the way. Dr. Mike is like millions of followers. He's not even at that level. But we are seeing a lot of like people, not doing the traditional route of going through a career and trying to sidestep the evaluation done by someone else and letting other people evaluate them directly by their content. We're seeing that kind of professional development going on. I think in particular, this is also exacerbated by all the COVID and remote work infrastructure that became available easily. So like in the past, you would have local interviews, but now you could hire globally, and you could evaluate what this person is like before you even hire them, because they have their own media, right? You can evaluate the media directly. So that's one thing where we see a lot of this kind of micro entrepreneurs creating their own mini businesses for their own careers and for their own professional lines. The other thing is, as a hirer, that where we try to help people hire in very large scale, testing has changed a lot. In particular because of AI. So I'm trying to like create a little bit of nuance as compared to what you would read on, like the AI is coming and taking all our jobs. In the past, I had to employ a lot of people to individually test people for their skills, for their communication, and whether they are a good fit for the company that's looking to hire them, for our clients, basically. And I could maybe like do 100 a day, or maybe 10 a day. But now with the advent of AI, we can actually test them much faster and at a much higher quality. I think if anyone's here a software engineer, most software engineer interviews are like cooking interviews. If you claim you are a chef, fry an egg in front of me, right? So software engineering interviews are like they're like, do this problem right away. Whereas many other interviews are not like that. Like they're a little bit more like, tell me about your last, last 4 years of work, whatever that is. But now with AI, we are able to both assess the skill and the communication of people applying via, like, say, large language models, as well as some voice simultaneous real-time communication, where we are able to react to their, while they're doing the tests, and also evaluate the actual textual content of what they're providing. So we're able to scale up like our evaluation and testing frameworks. And I think it's going to become more competitive. So again, this ties back to the media creation of professionals. Because let's say amongst everyone who has the same skill when you do the test, and I want to know you better as a person, and if on your CV you have a TikTok channel, I probably gravitate towards liking you more a little bit, because you kind of can see their communication, their how they are entrepreneurial, and how they share. So I think that's one of the important things we have seen. Yeah, so those are two things. The third thing is, I wanted to talk a little bit about whether or not, if you see a lot of articles out there, they talk about in the future, you need to be an AI-enabled professional worker by learning how to use ChatGPT or DALL-E or all these image creation tools. And this is a little bit contrarian. I don't think that will help much. I think it's not enough. Like, say for example, if you have the legal industry is one of the easiest ones to attack because it's all language, right? It's all text. If you have 3 paralegals and they used to be able to do, 21 cases a day, and now because of tools like Harvey or case text, you can get 1 paralegal to do all 21 cases. It wouldn't matter that you are a 2 times better paralegal than the next person. You would still be arbitrarily chosen because the AI makes you 4 times better, right? So it wouldn't matter that you were better than the other 2. You could still be arbitrarily chosen out. So I think what's more important is whatever Kelvin was saying just now, that you want to be a paralegal that knows a lot of people in the court system, right? When you file papers physically, how this works, how the motions of judges and other lawyers are like. You want to have a grasp in the physical world. You want to have an edge in it, right? So this also applies for people like doctors. You want to be somebody with great bedside manner, right? There's some app phone on the table while you're talking to the patient, and it's recording everything, and it's telling you this is the diagnosis. So amongst all doctors, they will all have access to this software, but the better doctors will have greater empathy, greater ability to ask better questions. So you want to have that grasp in the physical world and that edge, or you want to also be multidisciplinary. So that's the 4th thing I want to talk about, where if you are a paralegal during the daytime, maybe in the evening you want to learn how to be a 3D artist. It's a bit wacky, but in today's AI enabled tooling, I think there is no better time to learn, right? Learning has become, both professional learning as well as skill learning, has become much easier than ever before. Not just in terms of the total amount of content that used to be niche and used to be paid. You would be able to absorb a lot of this content from other people who are experts in this field. And then because of the overall like push in AI, you can actually have AI tutors teach you a lot of these, like they'll be able to correct you when you're wrong. They'll be able to answer micro questions that you might have that if in the past you needed a teacher to access, right? So I think it's not a good strategy to be a better paralegal, but you should be a paralegal with other skills, or you should be a paralegal who's also a 3D artist at night.